Hello, this is Pam Hoffman, Everyday Spacer.
I'm Jeff Miller, 2049 Outfitters.
At Everyday Spacer, we show regular folks how to personally and directly participate in space exploration, science, and astronomy. We are here on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, 12 midnight Eastern Time, and 2 p.m. on Saturday in Queensland, Australia. We're broadcasting live from Thousand Oaks, California. Thank you so much for joining us.
Our tonight's guest is Chris J. Kent. We'll be right back in 6.8 seconds. Okay, help us welcome Chris Kent from Earth Farms and Space Science from Ottawa, Canada. Sunhaven Research Group, SRG, is reverse engineering the future with innovation schools based on a Earth Farms and Space Science curriculum. These self-sufficient schools teach, feed, and equip local students in the developing world with zero tuition. We also do fun citizen science online, which, yay. Supporting and inspiring new generations of innovators is how we will engineer a better tomorrow. Please tell our audience a little bit more about what you do, Chris.
Well, sure. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And so what I do is in my current day job, I'm in auditing, finance. I've done private education before, and I'm a lifelong armchair scientist and nerd, science editor in a previous life as well. I help people edit papers, and I've always been very interested in innovation. I've always believed that education, a combination of education and technology, are the ways we're going to, basically make a difference. Because going backwards is just not an option. So for the last few years, I've been assembling a ragtag band of volunteers, you could say, and that's the Sunhaven Research Group. And it's basically, the idea is that we're in space, as Dr. Frank White of the Overview Effect would say. We're a closed system, but we're a closed system in the solar system.
There's nothing else but space.
There's nothing else. We're there already, and so for a long time, I've been interested in off-grid technology, in circular economies. So when you can basically close the loop, and closed loop systems is a lot like what you need in a spacecraft. I've also been a massive sci-fi nerd, Trekkie since I was a kid, this kind of thing. Yep. So the idea occurred to me that we could engineer a lot of local food security. We could engineer a lot of just better communities by applying the idea of closed loop systems and what we call vertical integration in the commerce world, where you instead of, let's say, a farmer could produce their crop, but then all the buyers know that you've got a bumper crop at a certain time, right? So the farmer never gets a great price for their crop. The farmer always has to get what they get. And if they don't sell, well, it all spoils and whatnot. But if you have the ability to, say, process your crop, maybe you have, access to a restaurant that you can, go out, like some of the market gardening that's been happening over the last decade, that's become quite popular. Right. Or if you can dry it or pickle it or can it, or just bake it into your own, let's say you run a bakery, and so that was kind of the inspiration behind the first thing that we talked about just before the show there, which is the life support system that my group has developed, and it's called DHOPS, and that's Delta Hybrid Oven Pyrolyzer System. And the core idea is, this is a big, if you've been to a wood-fired pizza restaurant, or a lot of people have them in their backyards now. Yep. And you fired these earthen or masonry ovens, and they stay hot for hours, 6-8 hours, and these are actually not that big. They're the footprint of a decently sized barbecue. So what we realized is that we could take a few of these ovens. They're actually upsized a little bit so that they're an industrial scale. Pair them together, and we run them on solar energy, but we do it in a way that's very, very inexpensive. The first way that we do it, and this is where the delta comes in. The first way we do it is we have a solar thermal collector. So if you've seen them, a lot of people do DIY solar thermal collectors for their swimming pools, the black networks of black pipes, and it heats up the water, but you can engineer those systems very easily and very reliably, especially if you have no winter, which is we've designed for the tropics and the subtropics, so there's no freezing. You can design those to regularly produce 95 degrees Celsius water, like almost boiling water.
Wow.
In fact, if you build it wrong, you can actually boil the water and damage the system. And so what we do is we engineer that so that you can store a large amount of hot water. Now, the interesting thing about this whole thing is the scale. This is a restaurant scale or community scale kind of device with clearance around it, enough around to open the doors and get your baking racks in and out. You probably need about 5 by 8 meters. So whatever that translates to in feet, I guess 3.3 meters per foot, 3.3 feet per meter. But yeah, so if you put it in a 20 by 15 space, that would be plenty, feet. Then you put it under a shade roof, mostly, except for the chimneys, of course. And then on that shade roof, you have you have now a place to work underneath it. You have so the solar collector, and you have essentially unlimited hot water at almost boiling temperature.
I saw that, Michael, and thanks for joining us, people. We've got Daniel and Michael here. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
That's okay. And so from that 95-degree water, then we have it designed so that you can, if you want to, then use just cheap solar cells, solar panels with a direct wiring. So no inverters, no complicated circuitry, no batteries required. You just run with a switch, some nice heavy-duty wires, and you run heating coils in the oven. And as long as you drain that water out so you're not boiling it, because you don't want to waste the water boiling the water, then you just need to heat the delta, because all that big masonry is already hot at 95 degrees, right? And then the next piece of magic is that we layer systems on top of it. So the ovens are in the center of the construction. And then you've got some water bath cookers, which are called sous vide cookers, and countertop. And so you can do basically like slow cooking, but again, on like a restaurant industrial scale. Then you've got dehydrators, big food dehydrators that are rolling rack kind of dehydrators. And those are, again, on the outside. And then you've got a big smoker. And so the heat bleeds out of the oven slowly over the course of the day, and you're heating it as long as there's sun, it's getting more heat and more heat and more heat.
Right.
And it bleeds out and it stays hot into the night, And so essentially 95% of the time, especially in the tropics or the subtropics, you're not gonna need to actually put any energy into it. You're not gonna need to burn anything. We do have the last part, the P is for pyrolyzer, and that's essentially it's a charcoal making machine that also gets very hot. And so you burn a little fire, and there's a steel drum, just like a 55-gallon drum, right? And that holds just farm waste, grass, twigs, whatever, and it will decompose it thermally. Instead of burning it, you do a clean thermal decomposition, and that can fire your oven very easily. If you happen to say have a couple days of overcast, like really there's been no real sun for a long time, or the asteroid hit and it's
you're
so
essentially cooking the hydrogen out of the
you're exactly, you're just taking the volatiles just escape because it's not has no oxygen in that retort, in that steel drum. Exactly. And the nice thing is that you end up with incredibly high grade charcoal. Oh, I'm looking at some of the comments here too.
Yeah,
Hello.
and we can read them too. Yeah, if there's actual questions, and I think David actually has one. Cliff was saying hi, and he's one of your Facebook friends. Down in Australia, they have lots of solar, hot water, and solar power. And David is saying, good evening. I'm looking up at you from below. They're in Australia. Just interested in the name Earth Farms and Space Science. I was actually curious about that too, because the way it sounds in your, the little intro bit is, that's a thing. So if you don't mind, at some point delving into that a little bit.
The idea came from for a curriculum for our schools. Is the ultimate thing we're going to be doing in the next few years is building schools, and building them around this unit of the DHOPS. So the idea behind the curriculum and the school is that we have a farm-to-table system on campus, or you could have it as a community. If you weren't running a school with this, you could do that with a community center or a rural community, a church, what have you, a temple, whatever. There's so many countries you could be in, right? Because anywhere there's no winter, it'll work.
And a school's a great place to test things out. You have a lot of students, a lot of.
If the first image, if you post the link there, the first image is actually is an instruction set. And so anyone with a reasonable amount of if you can pour concrete, if you can pour concrete, if you can do very basic, contractor work, you can build this. It's no harder to build than a masonry pizza oven, right?
You want me to throw this up on the screen?
Yeah, we can share this.
Sure, you could. Yeah.
You ready for that?
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead. And we did get another comment from Daniel, so we'll get to that in just a minute, Daniel.
But I'll finish. And I'll finish answering the first questions.
Yep.
The idea is to bring space science back home and down to earth, because we want to make a lot of these disciplines relatable and available to everyone in the developing world, and honestly, people here too, because a lot of people just don't grasp a lot of the amazing things that can go on in space science. Mm-hmm. So this is the first thing we characterize this as the life support system, right? Because you need to eat, you need to preserve food, and if you can do that without waste, if you can do that with a low energy cost, you can essentially, you're operating like a spaceship. And if you set up these circular economies, like the same way that, if you go out and you have a space crew, and they go out and in the near future, they're going to be growing some of their things in long-term missions. They're going to be growing some vegetables, some crops, for vitamins. They're not going to be growing a whole lot, and they're going to be taking some of all of their other food with them. But you have to be very careful about rationing and recycling and whatnot, because there's no resupply, right? There's no grocery store in Mars, right? So, so if you adopt this, if you can find a way like we have to give the same kind of really careful and really efficient and effective way to feed people, you can do things like lift neighborhood communities out of poverty, help anyway. I mean, it's not going to be like a one-stroke solution, but just the same way, there's a lot of cultures where they still run community bakeries, and the people will do their dough at home, and they're using their own pans and whatnot, and then you bring it to the bakery to bake, right? And with this, because there's no wood you have to buy, there's no natural gas or electricity bill. And we're intending this for the Philippines, by the way, for our first school, where electricity is crazy expensive. And so not having to pay for the energy, it's great for the environment, but it, more importantly for the local people, it means you get your bread baked for free, or maybe like a small nominal cost, you set up a community center model, that kind of thing. But it becomes that spaceship crew life support idea of closed loop systems. Right?
I love that.
Yeah.
So let's get to a couple more thoughts here. Daniel was saying biochar 2, and maybe you understand what that means.
So the very high quality charcoal that I mentioned that you produce in the pyrolyzer unit, that it can be used if you impregnate that, if you inoculate that with like soil fungi and beneficial organisms and whatnot, and then bury it in soil. That's actually a way of taking dead soil and giving it a biological matrix, because a really good charcoal has an amazing, it's super porous, and so it has an amazing surface area.
Yeah.
And the bacteria and the fungi, just that's a big apartment building for them, or a really small apartment building.
Lots of rooms.
So, yeah, and that's how you make soil, right? And similar, even though of course this is not a unit we're going to build on Mars, but a lot of the ideas are the same, right? The idea of heat transfer and volume relationships. So the idea that if you tried to build this big and small, it would cool off very quickly. But the pizza oven or our oven or an iceberg is a good example, actually. No doubt you've seen pictures of icebergs floating happily through the Caribbean, right? And they do this because there's such a huge mass and volume of ice that the surface area can't transmit enough heat. You can't conduct enough heat to have it melt. So it just cruises right on through for months and years, right? And the same thing with heat for our systems. And these kind of physical principles, if the students get them in there, if the students learn these physical principles, these are the kind of things that you have to look at spaceships' thermal design, you have to look at power, you have to look at all the same kind of factors,
So let's go back a little bit, because David had a little bit more on his question. Are we talking about subsistence on other worlds, say Mars, for instance, where there is very little in-house material to offer? And you kind of already started talking about that. How about going to a little bit further?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's where the closed economies come through. So in Mars, you would be, dealing with energy, like in terms of energy. It's actually a Mars colony is going to be really short on energy because they have to manufacture fuel. That's going to be the biggest challenges, to manufacture all that methane and liquid oxygen fuel for the Starship. Let's say Starship. Some people in the community don't believe in Starship, but let's just say Starship goes. You have to manufacture the fuel to get it to lift off and come home again. And that is, you need a power station, megawatts and megawatts and megawatts, right? So anything that you can use a little less power, especially if you have, let's say, if you have a dust storm and your solar panels come out, well, you're going to be, if you happen to be lucky enough to have a nuclear reactor, which they don't hand those out just at the corner store, right? I mean, there's a few little things they make you go through, right? So the average Mars colony in 50 years will probably have a reactor, but it's not like you're going to have hundreds of them. You're just going to have a backup reactor. So you're going to need to be energy efficient. And then energy drives all the rest of your chemistry, right? It drives all the stuff. You're going to get minerals. Your robots are going to bring in minerals. Of course, plants need to be kept warm and or cool. The humidity needs to be evened out. All the like the greenhouse kind of factors need to be taken care of. And actually later on, we'll be going through one of our citizen science things, which is a space food citizen science called SFAST. And I'll save a little bit there. This will touch on all those topics again. So.
And you can come back. You can come back another time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We did get a whole bunch of questions, so let's try and hit everybody. And thanks for joining us, David and Splash Autumn and Seth. Really appreciate that. David has something here. You're principally an agronomist, one who uses science to carry out experiments that create new techniques for agricultural production.
Well, I am not an agronomist by trade, but we've been advised by many, and my my chief agronomist is actually a lifelong gardener and trained horticulturalist. So, but I've done also work in in biology departments and some chemistry work, not professionally, but again, in depth as an amateur. So hydroponics and aquaponics and aeroponics, and these are all things that we're familiar with.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Daniel is saying the whole Earth is now the redeveloping world. Well, I think we're always kind of
yeah. And that's the thing. I say, we write developing world for the schools, but that's only just because we're starting where it's needed most, right? But there's economically depressed areas. I'm from Canada right now. Here I'm in our nation's capital of Ottawa, and the area that I grew up in has a historical 50% plus unemployment rate.
Wow.
So it's a hilly kind of, imagine the Appalachians. If you're talking the U.S.
More snow.
More snow.
So, and really it's there's areas all over that could use a community center where, not only just for baking your bread, or helping local farmers or doing whatever, curing meat. But once you've got a reliable clean water coming through there, because we're doing rain catchment, you've got shower blocks. Well, what if you do have a natural disaster? Well, now you've got you've got some resilience in your community, right?
A little bit decentralized, yeah.
It's local, instead of depending on the government, which is how many hours away, and that may never come, right? I mean, because can they get through? Can trucks get through? Maybe not, right? And in our area, which was a very mountainous, not like Himalayan mountainous, but good enough that in the winter you're not getting through some of those roads. Like, you need a 4x4 if you're going to get through.
Right.
So it would be really handy to have a place where everyone can huddle together. And eventually this will actually be good we can only develop one version at once. So eventually this will be really good for the North as well, because especially with the solar, the panels, panels are cheap, right? Panels are a small percent and getting smaller percentage of the cost of a solar system. And by doing a lot of our stuff direct or near direct, then you skip the cost of batteries, you skip the cost of the circuitry, and you also make it more reliable. Like, your battery charger circuit went out, your inverter's out, no problem. You still have heat, you still have a working cooker, you still have all these things. And there's a lot you can run direct, there's a lot you can then run, I would say one layer above, like our power system, which I don't have any resources for that to show you today. But the power system is built in layers. And so, there's like, okay, wires hooked between panels and heater. That's layer one, super basic. Add a little bit of a battery bank, and you add USB charging. You add high efficiency LED lights, like camper, like RV camper kind of technology, right? 12 volt or 5 volt. And that's not that hard to do. And suddenly your community center, well, if there's a storm or a disaster, guess what? It's still good,
And tons of stuff is converted. I've got a degree in electronics, and tons of stuff is actually converted from the AC you get in your wall to direct current. So there you go.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's keep answering some questions though, because they're piling up.
Yeah.
Splash Autumn, thanks for joining us. Just curious, can we grow plants on Mars? That is a really big question. And the weekly space hangout, they had some folks come in and talk to us about growing plants in, varying places with varying degrees of gravity. But yeah, go ahead and tell us anything about that, Chris, and even Jeff. Certainly. I know you know some stuff about this stuff too.
Well, certainly, like if you're talking in greenhouses and under domes, underground with artificial lights, certainly no problem. Plants will grow very well on Mars. If we're talking farther into the future, when we can maybe take there's some organisms on Earth that we call extremophiles. And we call them extremophiles because they can exist in extreme environments. And so with, genetic engineering, with selective breeding and lots of work, which we haven't actually successfully done yet, but is theoretically possible, we could get plants growing in low pressure. We could get plants growing in, even if you, let's say, the atmospheric pressure on Mars is really, really low. It's like 1% to 2% of the pressure of Earth. But if you go to the lowest parts of the canyon, like certain canyons, if you go to low valleys, it's more. There is more pressure because it's low lying, and a lot of people think, a lot of exobiologists think that we might eventually be able to engineer something that could grow on, if as long as you kept it warm and gave it water and had nice soil for it, like we talked about the biochar, and you would need to clean the Martian soil of any toxic elements, and then you would need to amend it with biological material and making it a nice, if you go to your garden and the gardens that are really good, they have that nice, rich, soft, brown, black earth. You need to turn kind of like beach sand into that,
Right. And another possibility is just whacking Mars with a few comets.
Yeah. In the distant future. And you never know what they'll come up with in 200 or 300 years.
Yeah.
So Seth had a point. I think that was very specific to the Times Square Cube law. Do you remember that? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I was talking about upscaling about the fact that a really small pizza oven wouldn't really work, but once you get it bigger,
that's right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Great.
Now, the unit that you see in the instructions, by the way, would probably still work if we split it in half. It's
is that
symmetrical.
here?
It's got two central ovens. So
is this the first image, Chris, on your?
Yeah, that's the top view, exactly. Okay. The very first image in under one, and you can see it has two ovens and a countertop. So if you split that in half and just one pyre, it could probably still work. It would probably still. It's still of the scale that it would work nicely. It would still be much bigger than the backyard pizza oven.
Okay. And we did add that link to the comments. So if you want to click on that and follow along,
it's a good time too if you can scroll down and you can see what we plan to build around. This is the school. Now, not the exact school, but this is the school we plan to build around that DHOPS unit. And so this is about 2 acres, a little bit under what they call a hectare, 10,000 square meters. Mm-hmm. And we haven't decided on the final property yet because we're still seeking grants. So, by the way, if anyone watching is from a philanthropic organization, please help us make a difference. But that central building, if you actually go down to even the very next image.
Sure. And
we do have some more questions. I have them blocked off. There you go. And so you can see the ones in bright yellow, that central image.
Yeah.
The teeny tiny one, just in the south, in the bottom, in bright yellow, is actually the DHOPS under its own little shade roof. So our idea there is we would build one of them as a prototype, the Mark I, and then there's going to be another one in the actual bakery section in the middle. And then that bright yellow roof actually has a number of sections, and to the if you're I'm looking at the screen, so to my right or to the east, yes, to the east, is a single story, fairly high set of slanted shade roofs, and then the other section that's actually it's got a long column of text. And it says S2. That's or 2S. It's because it's a 2-story structure, and that's actually our observatory.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So if you go back up and maybe you can zoom in, I'm not sure, and you zoom into the rooftop over there.
Yeah, he's gonna try.
Yeah.
No,
It's probably a little tricky.
It
But anyway, so
adjusts,
that
yeah.
rooftop is like a courtyard rooftop, and
Oh,
so there's a central deck, and then there's some bunkies kind of for visiting students to stay, and because there's going to be a lot of sleeping in the daytime to stay up and do nighttime viewing sessions, that kind of thing.
right.
And then towards the north, towards the back,
Oh,
we plan a little rolling roof observatory. And actually, if you go down, if you go down more, I've got the floor plans for that section.
so next image, basically, or
Yeah,
something after that.
that's the first floor. Yeah, that's the ground floor.
Zoom out a little bit.
Yeah, so now you can see we're not the big L-shaped one. We're not actually going to build at the beginning. That's a residence for international students.
Okay.
But you can see the other structure on the ground floor. We have things like staff residence. We have, especially in the Philippines, in the developing world, someone needs to always be there full time just for security and whatnot.
Yep.
Okay.
And because we may have students in residence. What we're doing is, our students, we really give them a 5-year mission. We don't charge them tuition. We don't charge them anything except their time, but they've got to commit to, at least trying to finish the 5 years. And we feed them, we equip them, and we do that. The reason we can do that is our life support system makes it very economical to do so.
Got it.
In return, they work the farm with us. They keep things going. They work the restaurant. The money comes in from, we're already cooking for a lot of students. So we have a little convenience store. In the Philippines, they call it sari-sari store. So it's kind of like a window with, like a one person, and it's a secure window. And you see all the things. And if you ask for the bag of chips in the window, they'll say the bag of chips in the window, kind of thing. And so we have one of those on site, and that's also the method of payment, the point of payment in our cantina is the little sari-sari store. And then the full service restaurant will do, fancy dishes and, custom order cakes and whatnot from our bakery for people who want to pay. But we also do our meal service for our students.
Mm-hmm.
And then we send home leftovers and grocery packets for the families.
Wow.
And yeah,
Sounds
the reason we do this is because the situation in a lot of we're doing students that are 18 plus because just of liability reasons. So in the future, we might be doing high schoolers if we can figure out a legal way to do it. That's not a minefield, but 18 plus is also post-secondary, and because we're expecting the students to be, they have to self-motivate a little bit. They have to be on track here, but they're also going to be getting pressure to go and work for to bring some money for the family. So instead, we send them home with food, and of course, their families are not heartless. They know that their child is getting education too. So, that's good. But we do try to make sure that the situation is good. And for those students who can't afford even to commute, we're going to be located somewhere peri-urban, just on the edge of a city, because obviously you can't afford to farm in the middle of a city. It's just not,
not good for observing either.
Yeah, it's not just for a number. Yeah, exactly. For the observer, our observatory probably won't have the best lighting conditions, but it won't have the worst.
Right.
But yeah, some students will, for whatever reason, if they need to stay with us on campus, they'll be welcome to do that as well.
So let's answer some more questions. They keep coming.
Sure.
So just curious, how can we build a place? How can we build a place for plants and trees in space station? It's enough to supply us with the oxygen and be independent without it relying on oxygen supply from Earth. Great question, Splash Autumn. Thank you so much.
It's a great one. Yeah. As long as your conditions are greenhouse conditions, and you have your ship built so that the radiation and all the life support conditions are good for people, in general, you can grow some pretty big plants. now our ships and our stations are going to have to get much bigger before we do trees.
Right.
So if you look at what they've done on the ISS, for example, is they've done a lot of different crops, kind of dwarf crops. This big layer, that big, microgreen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now towards the end, we have something fun and special, which is a spaceship design, which you'll see the saucer section, and it's a real spaceship design.
Is this in your images?
Yeah, in the images.
Oh, okay. Let's go there.
But yeah, well, if you want to, yeah, sure.
Is that it? Did we find them? Okay, cool.
Yeah, anyone who wants to go, by the way, and get a closer look, because these are large images, so just download them via the link, and you can see that it's inspired by Star Trek, even though it's a real-world design. It's not a real-world design that we'll ever build, because it would be billions and billions of dollars, and I don't have that. So it's also something that is designed. You can see that the back is 3 starships docked. So the starship docks in. And the whole idea is that the starship is great for getting off Earth and great for landing on Mars. The chemical engines are not that actually that great for long distance space travel. So this is a system that basically takes those wonderful huge landers, because essentially what they are is great landers, docks them in, and then it mounts nuclear reactors, fission, fusion, big solar wings, and it powers a really efficient electrical drive, like a plasma drive, the kind of thing you see in Battlestar Galactica, big, like, cool looking spaceship drives. And they're actually kind of weak, but you keep them burning for a long time, and they really, really get you going fast, because it's a gentle acceleration, but it's over the whole point. If you have let's say a 4 or a 6 month trip to Mars, and you've used your powerful chemical engines to break orbit, because the planet has you. Once you've broken orbit past what they call a transfer orbit, then you're free. A little bit of acceleration will start to give you big speed. And so then you kick in your really efficient electrical plasma drives, and you burn all the way to the midpoint, and then you turn around and you decelerate all the way to the next transfer. And so the question there about the environment there is, the saucer on the ship is a 70-meter diameter saucer, and that's the inside of it is pretty much all greenhouses with things like the CIC, the Control Information Center, or the bridge, if you were to say in Star Trek terms, is like in the center. There's some cubby holes for people to sleep in, but it's all that green on the floor plan of the saucer is all something growing somehow. So whether it's algae or rows of lettuce, or in the larger area, imagine all the walls coated with plants that are edible, but also look nice. So this is one of the So imagine a 3-dimensional being in a fishbowl, because you're in microgravity, right? And you could float around. And actually, if you look, zoom in. And I know we can't really do that here, but for anyone who's going to look at the image, if you zoom in, there's little islands. And those would be on cables. So you'd have like a web, you could do a Spider-Man through the big space. Because cool. Much like the ISS, if you get stuck in the middle, if you get stuck in the middle of a big space and you have no one to come and pull you out, nothing to push against, then you're stuck. Yeah. So not only are there plants everywhere, including on these islands, but there's okay, I can reach out to a cable, I can get a handhold or a foothold or whatever, right?
Like Tarzan. I love it.
Yeah, like Tarzan. So you're in this kind of a floating island, like Avatar. Kind of like Avatar. And we actually do have it designed up and down. We have a dorsal and a ventral view for the ship, and the up and down is actually we figured out a reason to do this, because we have most of the radiation, the passive radiation shielding. So thicker layers of systems and water tanks and hull plates and hull blankets. We have that on the side facing away from whatever planet or body you're orbiting, because the planet will shield your underside. So it'll shield your dorsal. It'll shield your ventral, your belly, whereas your back, your dorsal, needs that extra protection from the galactic cosmic rays.
Boy, a lot of smart stuff. I love it.
Yeah,
Let's talk to David. He's been waiting for a while. So let's see. You mentioned this was free to participants, and you are interested in funding. And I know you've been talking about writing grants, and
yeah.
I don't know if you're going for sponsorships.
We need some startup funding. Yeah. Because we don't have any independent millionaires yet willing to fund us. But what we've done is we've made it as efficient as possible to start off. And the school, as designed, will work, like I said, in stages. The budget is showing us that to build that good, solid, working the bright yellow core building, and to get the farm planted and everything, even actually the farm is actually the inexpensive portion. We could have twice this farm area for very little extra cost. The big cost is the structures. And actually, maybe even the bigger cost than the structures is the equipment and the operating capital to keep us going until we get our revenue going. Now, this is where it's interesting with revenue, is the school system is called SMART. So that's students doing media, art, research, and team projects.
Wow.
And so you have a little bit of on-campus revenue, like we talked. You have a restaurant, you have maybe arts and crafts, we're going to be building a lot of our own furniture and storage gear and racks. We're going to be doing a lot of DIY, right? So maybe someone, if we have some students or some staff that are really good at doing furniture, okay, that might be a viable little sideline, but that on-campus revenue is probably going to be a little bit small. It's probably going to be steady eventually, though, once we get, local people coming to the store. So that's like kind of subsistence revenue.
Right.
The next tier of revenue is international students. The local students don't pay, but the international students do pay. However, it's a really good program we have envisioned for them. Not only do we not work them too hard, it's not quite academic tourism, but we give a lot of time in the week for cultural exchange, and that's also for the students in their teams as well, because then you get cosmopolitan people, and you get different perspectives, and that's one of the things that's super important to innovation, is being able to be outside of the box, right? And that's also why we chose space, because it's kind of a polar, for anyone who knows country mouse and city mouse, right? The farm is the country mouse. And what could be more city mouse than space, right? I mean, it's super nerdy versus super country, right? So we do the whole spectrum.
There's no cinemas in space, though.
Yeah, and but there's going to be farmers in space too. So it's all circular,
right?
And now SMART, the media and the art is really where our biggest revenue will come in. And that's because we don't do lectures, we do projects. And that's actually our curriculum is based on that saying, projects, not lectures. So if someone needs to take a course, of course, people need to learn things. They need, traditional education is the way it is because of reasons. But there's Khan Academy, there's MIT OpenCourseWare. There's so much on the web now that's done way better than we can do it. So we give our students access to that when they need it, or when they want it. But then most of what they're doing is projects. And these projects are always documented. So each student team is going to be basically running a YouTube channel.
Nice.
and doing this kind of thing. And so you'll see them blogging for their supporter communities. They'll be live streaming, this kind of thing. And it's meaningful media, because let's say you have a corporate sponsor involved, that say maybe they donated equipment, or maybe they are actually a monetary sponsor. We can, we can really dovetail the interest in, like, Sony gives us all a bunch of equipment, and we can really show people who, are being benefited. It's not just greenwashing, or it's not just a fake social gesture. You're actually helping these students. These students really are, being moved up in opportunity. So
and it sounds like it's just going to ripple out. I mean, the community, and then
kind of the hope. Yeah. And kind of the hope too is that, like, in our development roadmap,
we got more. I just
regarding icebergs. Sure, let's talk about icebergs. I like icebergs.
And then he doesn't follow up on that, but
I have a story. I have a story for people who might not know.
All right.
Actually, it started in, I think it was Maine, and before refrigeration, and before significant modern refrigeration. There was a farmer who owned land with a bunch of ponds on it. And he figured out that he could cut blocks of ice and bury them in sawdust. Mm-hmm. And because of the square cube law, which another individual mentioned, the fact that the surface area is now, too small for the heat to transmit through, they stayed frozen until he needed it.
Very slowly, yeah.
Yeah,
and the amazing thing is that by hook and crook, he had to do things like overcome, like, to ship his ice. They actually had to end up buying ships, because captains of the day, and we're talking the 1830s, right? Captains of the day would not take ice on board their ships, because that's an evil omen, right? So they had to buy their own ships. But by the 1840s, people in rich clubs in Bombay, in Australia, in Singapore, were drinking their cold drinks with ice cubes from a pond in Maine. Which is just, it's an amazing thing. And then, the technology came to the point where, no longer needed to actually have the big cubes. But there was an intermediate stage where there was ice plants. And for any Bruce Lee fans, one of his best movies was a fight in an ice plant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So we got two from Daniel. He wants to talk about permaculture.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And amateur radio. Oh, you know about permaculture. Cool. So, yeah, he's asking if you want to integrate those and what. Yeah.
Well, if you go back to the site plan for the school.
This one?
Yeah. Either one will be fine. If you see the rows, the orchard rows.
Yeah.
So there's rows of 5 trees each. And now these are, again, this is an approximate thing. So this is a modular site plan, because the actual property is not going to actually be perfectly square, almost guaranteed. But you'll note that the orchard rows are only 5 trees long, and there's all going to be a whole biome in there of layers, right? And if he goes to the website, actually, you can see our first farm planting page, and we've got 48 species now, I think, what we're going to plant. And so basically, we have these little biomes, these little cutout biomes, and you just need to navigate through. And the first farm planting is in our development roadmap. You'll find that later, I'm sure. But each of these, you'll notice that each of the tree types in these rows, we never get them too close to each other. So there's never a monoculture. So it's always a good separation between certain types of the same tree. So if there's a disease or something like that, it doesn't spread through the whole place, if there's pests, that kind of thing. And there would be whole layers. So when you do permaculture, when you do one approach to permaculture, which is called a food forest, it's imagine a forest engineered just with edibles. And so we'll do the canopy layer, we'll do the sub canopy, we'll do the low layer, we'll do the root crops as much as we can. The orchard rows are going to be what we call no-till. So we're not going to disturb the soil. So there's not going to be any, basically no root, no rhizomes, no tubers, no root crops coming out of there. But we have some permaculture. It's a different form of permaculture. It's more like market gardening. But we have some mound rows, the gray ones, in between north-south. So you can see that they're separated, right?
Right.
And those are going to be for annuals and this kind of thing. We're still going to do intercropping. We're going to follow permaculture principles, but that's where we'll grow our cassava, our sweet potatoes, our, or even things like legumes, where we want to fix nitrogen in the soil there after another crop has been, we'll rotate legumes in.
Right.
And then we'll even do things like we'll take the chop and drop from those legumes, because the stalks and whatnot, and then those have nitrogen in it too. So we can till those under in those area, and those mounds will actually generate soil over time, especially because we are going to actually be doing probably larger biochar or more regular biochar than just in the occasional firing that it would show on the D-hops unit. Even though 2 steel drums worth over time, if we keep doing that, like, we'll end up with a lot of charcoal,
So David wants to know if you are the Chris Kent, who's also known as Nightwing.
No. No, I think of the Nightwing comics.
Oh, okay.
I
don't know.
I can neither confirm nor deny said rumor.
And Splash Autumn says, just curious, when the sun becomes a red giant, how long does Proxima have left? I'm not entirely sure I understand your question, Splash Autumn, but it sounds like... Oh, here it is, Proxima Centauri.
Yeah.
Got it. And there's a follow-up here. If we send probes to Proxima Centauri, what can be made possible to increase its travel with nuclear energy? Wow, these are great questions.
Well, there's...
Oh, one more.
Oh,
and this is actually about the school. May I ask details about the school and about the programs? Just curious. So there's a lot in there to unpack.
Yes, there's a lot. But it really comes down. So let me get to Proxima first, though, because I just read yesterday an interesting article saying that the red dwarf stars, like one of the ones in the Proxima system, they're very long-lived, very, very long-lived.
Yes.
And it's a new study has indicated that they may not be as bad for their planets as we thought before. So the environments might be nicer. Yeah. So to answer the red giant question, if we've managed to move on to some of our stellar neighbors, especially if they're dwarf stars, we have a long time left. Yeah. So that's definitely the I guess we're in the starter house, and we've got to relocate to a nicer suburb later on. But
All right. So, and you've been telling us some details about the school, and if you have something specific, Splash Autumn, give us a specific question, because it's a little too broad to try and really help you out there. And and we got
it's also
other
possible
issues too.
that Splash has specific questions for you that might go into too much detail for the show. Is there a way on your website to contact you?
There's definitely, there's a contact us page, and
so there's the link. It's in the chat.
Yeah, and the main menu takes you everywhere you need to go. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. We had one from Seth. Sounds like he is a ham radio operator as well. I did not know that, Seth. Very cool. And then we have David. We recently found planets around Proxima Centauri. Okay,
at least one, I think. Yeah, maybe more. I might be out of date. Yeah.
Well, if you found one, there's probably more. No guarantee, but probably.
Yeah.
When James Webb launches, we're probably going to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we may very well. Yes.
Is that already? James Webb is already on the way to the Ariane, right?
No.
Oh, no?
They haven't launched yet. They had lots of setbacks, and we've actually seen that. I've been there a couple of times to when it was here in town, and I'm kind of glad, because there's no way to go like with Hubble and
Yeah,
Fix-It.
there's no do-over at a Lagrange
No,
point. Yeah.
no,
So,
you want to stick that launch, and I'm really glad that they're doing everything they can to make it work.
there
Really
was a question about specific school, specific projects the students might do, and I can actually give you the rundown on what a student's day would be like.
Sure.
So working on the farm or working in the kitchen is still going to be project based. You know, not every project, and this is with science, with engineering, with anything, with any work, not every project is glamorous. But when we have them doing things in the kitchen, some people will really take to that. And so there's product development. You know, every student will be asked to do a lot of things related to that food plus system, which we call it a farm to table plus shelf stable, because we're doing our farm to our own table and nearby tables. But then we also have on site, we're going to be doing a lot of shelf stable products. So like we're going to be doing like a lot of pickling, a lot of canning, making our own vinegars, doing our own wines and beers.
I like it.
Yeah. So, and the shelf stable is important, and drying things. The shelf stable is important, of course, because storage of food allows you to have plenty, you know, where you don't waste.
Right.
Now, that's only a couple hours a day. We want to train innovators, not necessarily just fine chefs, even though, you know, there's a lot in the world of food. It's tons. But what they're going to be doing is, in the first year, we're going to make sure that their English skills are good, because that's the working language for our system. And their communication skills, their media skills, because everyone's got to document everything. So someone's going to be really good with the post edit, all the YouTuber skills, right? And then also just basic research skills, that kind of thing. But they're also going to be casting around for, in that media, art, or research, we're going to have other things on campus. And it depends on the budget, how hardware lean we make it, right? So if we have the resources, everyone's going to get some robotics experience. You know, probably with Arduinos, this kind of thing, small kits. Everyone's probably still going to get some of that experience, but if we have less budget at the time, then, you know, they don't get their own Arduino. They got to build their stuff, and then we take the Arduino around and plug it in to each project, that kind of thing, right? So, and there's going to be people who are interested in theoretical stuff. Like we're going to encourage, because it helps us be hardware lean, people who want to study physics. Fantastic. You know, because we can support a lot of theoretical physicists on this campus.
Yeah, I have a feeling they will guide you where. Yeah. Well, and then there'll also be a factor of, okay, so what's needed out there? Where, because when these folks are done, they are going to want to integrate into the world of business, right?
Now, the nice thing is that there's always, with the team under the T, and this is, you know, I'm a commerce guy by trade now, so that's, you know, I've gone to the business school, the whole bit. And under the T, we are going to do, you know, product development. We're going to do basic accounting. They're going to understand how the business of the school works, and how all the revenue works, everything like that. So Smart. They're going to get real experience. And of course, because whatever they do is going to be documented, and they're going to have, you know, there's going to be websites, there's going to be, you know, photo essays, videos. When they go to an employer, the employer asks them, "What can you do?"
Oh, beautiful.
Right?
It's like their CV right there.
That's right. And it's projects, not lectures, because that helps them achieve. You know? Very
good. We do have a couple more. Let's see. Cliff thinks that the James Webb Space Telescope will launch this year.
I hope so.
I don't know. And we heard from Splash Autumn again. I guess there's an issue with the keyboard, and we finally do have some, let's see, plants, fruits, trees, and habitable planets. Do we know if it's safe and edible for humans to eat? I don't think we really know yet, but there are ways to test things, definitely.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions is it actually nutritious for us, whether it's edible or not?
That's a really good question.
Because, you know, sugar's twisted the wrong way, and and digest them. So,
Right.
And the answer to that question, if we go to another world and the biology is very similar to our own biology, that is a really interesting piece of information
yeah,
if such a thing happened, because it means that somehow life was spread from here to there or there to here.
Or
Maybe
that
there's
there's lots
aliens
in
at work. Who
common.
knows? You know?
Yeah, there'll be a lot of really, really interesting things we learn from that.
There's a lot of stuff that had to happen for our current system to be as it is.
Yep.
My thought is that if we go to other planets, the most we'll likely find are slime molds and the like. As
I
you know,
tend to think, well, maybe undersea environments might be richer, like Ganymede and Europa, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
But
right.
surface, I think we don't have at least in our solar system, we don't have the environment for it.
Yeah. Well, my thinking is that like Ganymede and Europa look fairly stable as they are.
Yeah.
So that means no big die-offs of the current, best, the current best. So the single-celled organisms will probably still be there unless things have happened that that whacked them pretty good, that made it not likely, so that's, but right now it's all just people talking because no one knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course,
and even the Burton, the ship that that we've designed there, which is a real world design, by the way. It's that's one of our citizen science projects.
In your chart.
And I don't
know if you saw, but Cliff said, "Or will they want to eat you?"
Maybe.
Did you find it? Did you find it? Oh, here is this it, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah, that ship is probably not designed to do too much past Jupiter, but this is still a very crude reference design. In terms of if NASA was looking at this, and actually I have had some friends, well, associates anyway, give me pointers because I don't know all of the system workings, but ships like this, if we can make it to Jupiter in our lifetime with regular crews and doing real things, that will be up to the limit, I think, of our technology. But as soon as we have nuclear power in space, as soon as we have figured out a good life support system, like something like Strawn there, or something on the scale of Biosphere 2 way back in the day, but that works. Where you have this long-term, you can do 5-year missions basically, and one of the interesting things too is that anyone who wants can participate with us and start to benchmark systems with us.
Awesome.
So how we're doing that on the citizen science, on both of our citizen science projects, the one for food and the one for sci-fi, is we benchmark real technology. So if for our solar arrays, we can go and we can look at all the specs of what NASA has flown for the ISS. So, okay, that gives us a real world working piece of hardware. And there's a surprising number of working pieces of hardware. A lot of them haven't flown, but that's okay as long as it's reputable and it's not someone's, garage coil winding perpetual motion machine. We won't count those, but you can fairly easily go and pull up all the literature that benchmarks these real technologies. So you figure out, how much power does it need, mass, thermal, volume, and cost is the last thing we're gonna do, because our thinking for how to figure out what's going to happen in the future, and you'll see that the phrase that we're using is reverse engineering the future, and our thinking on that is we're going to take the specs of what a piece of technology can do now, and then we're going to say, okay, because it has to be reliable in space, like you do not want things breaking inside of 5 years. You want your 5-year mission to go well. Yeah. And you want them to be durable, and you want them to be reliable, and you want them to probably be a little lower cost than they are now. So we're thinking, okay, all of those things happen so that this ship is eventually affordable, but it works more or less the same as the way that it works now in real life. So that allows you to then start playing Lego, right? But really like space Lego. And you can start figuring out how the systems lay out and plug together and this kind of thing. And it's a lot of fun, you know?
Cool. Let's get to a few more. We have from Splash Autumn again. Thank you so much. Talking about the seeds and the trees and the vegetables. Can we grow them out there? What about the soil of the new habitable planets? How will it affect the trees and fruits? That's a very, very, very good question.
Well,
soil is a big deal.
Yeah, we'll have to bring fungus and bacteria with us to
break them down
to
and
make soil
make
for
them
us.
what we need. And we heard from David again. Nice listening to you, Chris. I wish your project's well. Pam, good to see you. It's good to see America is still open for business. Well, I'm really happy about that too, David.
And David, just so you know, Chris is from Canada.
Canada, yeah.
Which is of course America's hat.
That's right.
Cliff says we were warned not to go to Europa. 2001. Splash.
No, that was 2010.
That was 2010.
You lose geek points there, Cliff.
And Splash Autumn is back. If there are plants on the new habitable planets, how do we know if the atmosphere is suitable for humans? I think that's easier to figure out than the plants. Figuring the plants might be growing in a different way and not on how our atmosphere. Yes, they may very well do that. Let's see. Cliff has no roadside assistance out there. No. You all sound the same. Yes, until Chris says about, because then it's about.
That's it. I'll tell you all about it.
All about it. Yeah. All right. So, Chris, I know it's really, really late for you there. It's like 1 a.m. or something in the morning for you.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes. Yeah.
We have a little bit more for our show, and we will answer some more questions, but we don't want to keep you up too late because we want you to come back. We want to be nice hosts.
I'm very happy to be here.
And we can't wait to hear more about this, and I have a feeling there will be some collaborating with us in the future. So at this point, we usually talk about what you can see in the night sky, and that's the 27th through the 3rd, September 3rd. On August 28th, Uranus and the moon are in conjunction. You want to look for the late rising moon around 10 p.m. at night, and the moon is visible. Uranus, you're going to need something like binoculars or telescope. On the 30th, it's the last quarter moon. This rises at midnight and sets at noon the next day, September 3rd. We are back, and we actually have another guest next week. Delaney Thielman will be our guest. And you can find us on the Everyday Spacer Facebook page and the Everyday Spacer YouTube channel. If you or someone you know has done something interesting involving space exploration, science, astronomy, stuff like that, we would love to share our live. Like I said, next Friday is September 3rd. Delaney Thielman, who was the project manager and human resources officer on the NCAS virtual experience project that Louisa Janess told us about last week. So Louisa, mentioned to Delaney that she could be on our show, and guess what? Next week she is. Delaney is studying electrical and computer engineering. She's leading the STEM club at her college, and they're organizing an after-school STEM program to get kids involved with STEM earlier. She's also participating in NASA's L-Space Mission Concept Academy. That looks like a really cool program. And we are in talks with a few more people. Dr. Adam Dippert, the space juggler, will be here on September 10th. John Keppel, author of The Art Flame, has committed to being with us on September 24th. Nice. And that sounds very interesting to me. I don't know a lot about it yet, but that's why we do this. So we are going to learn. All right. And we've got a couple pending. We still don't have dates for Greg Allison, Tim Pickens. And we added Sherry J, John Keppel's scheduled. Sorry, I got to take that off of there. Chelsea Gould and Don Dowdy. So thanks so much, Chris. We will definitely have you come back. I want to hear all about what happens between now and getting this set up and all the good stuff your students are doing. We would love to interview your students here too. I think that'd be a great opportunity to get to, do something a little different. That'd be really fun.
Would be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll have you on our show too, once we get launched.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I think there'll be some really fun things we can do together. So, yeah, thanks so much, folks. I really appreciate you being here, and we will see you next week.
See ya.